of a culture that praises the unrighteous and celebrates mediocrity. It's time for a new age, when power to tell stories of the future will be in the hands of the people. Rise up! Become the culture! Hail the Iron Age! Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to Iron Age Legends, Episode 6. Tonight, I'll be talking to a Mr. Herman P. Hunter!
Party on, Wayne.
How you doing, good sir?
Oh, pretty good. Yourself?
Oh, just fine, man. It's beautiful. It was actually a really nice day out here for working conditions. Except that the window in my truck either gets stuck up or gets stuck down. I'm going to have to take it apart a second time, figure out why that's going on. But, alas, today we're going to be talking about your two books, your writing process, things regarding storytelling, as well as hyping things up for your upcoming release titled
The Revenant and the Cult, Book 1. And it's Trapper and the Missing Spy. I forget the name.
Absolutely. Snow says, Herman, I'm cheating on Chester for you.
Oh, boy. Oh, man, I'm going to catch so much crap when I go back next week.
Oh, no. Oh, we got MD Boncher has joined us as well. Fantastic, man. Fantastic.
Emotional damage.
I love it, man. I love it. So I've talked to quite a few authors at this point, and some of them, I've talked to AC. He's going to be on the show here at some point too. He's been writing pretty much his entire life. Was that the case for you, or did you kind of get into it in your more recent years, or the later?
No, I didn't get into it till I was in middle age. At one point or another, I started because of work. I had to do a lot of traveling. And so it was you go on these planes. I would get either my wife had just gotten into one of those Barnes and Noble ebook readers. They weren't called Nooks at that time, but they were I forget what they were called. Anyways, so we got an ebook reader, and so I would take it periodically, and I would get an ebook, and then this around the time that the Lord of the Rings is coming out. So I'd pick up Lord of the Rings and I'd read it because I read it when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, I really didn't understand a lot of it. So
it's a little high level for someone of a younger age.
Well, honestly. It's weird. After I read the Lord of the Rings, I picked up the Silmarillion and I burned through that book.
Weird. That's a weird one, honestly. Yeah, I bet you're not the only person I know who said that. So there must be something to it.
And then, what was I going to say? I burned through that book, and then the other one that I read was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I think it was. Was
Oh,
it
that's a
Galaxy?
funny book.
Yeah, and that was another one. I just burned right through that book, and I actually ended up reading the entire trilogy. My mom let me actually buy those books because she was one of those. Oh, you better not be reading anything that's subversive or whatever. So, which it kind of
Was that like a just
Yeah.
religious thing or something
No,
else?
she was just very strict. I mean,
Oh, okay.
so
Every parent has their thing. Like a friend of
Yeah.
mine, he was allowed to watch the Saw movies when we were young kids. I'm like,
yeah,
first, why? But then his mother was like, okay, but no vampire movies
yeah,
at all. Nothing. No Lost Boys, no Twilight,
no vampire.
no Blade, nothing. Saw, yes. Vampires,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Watching people get mutilated, that's okay, but vampires, no vampires.
We have to protect our children.
Yes. So, I mean, I remember I had asked to get the Knack album. This is when My Sharona came out, and I asked to get the Knack album. She didn't know it was on there, and I think my sister got it for me for either my birthday or Christmas.
Oh,
And
wow.
she heard the lyrics on that, and she freaked, took it away from me, and all that other stuff. Well, and I didn't know. I didn't know what the words meant because I was an innocent kid.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's how it goes, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so was she was a bit on the strict side. Yo, hey John.
Hail John Timo. We got both the Bonchers and Bambos, Bonchers, and I can't say what the word I was about to first came to mind, so never mind. Maybe booze. There we go. There are movies, books. Yeah. That didn't really work for me either. It was yeah.
Well, the thing is that my mom used to sit there and watch like the creature features, in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's Saturday afternoon, and so it's one of those weird kind of things. Like, okay, but well, whatever. So
depending on the era, there's an abundance of female flesh available for a young man on some of those older horror movies, if I recall. But
yeah, well, I mean the ones that were on TV that time because of the
TV, yeah,
the obscenity codes and all that other stuff. But by and large, so it was a very strict. I was living in a very strict household. Of course, that I was always finding ways around it. They were always taking away my Dungeons and Dragons books.
Because of was that during the devil?
No, actually, it was my poor grades.
Oh,
and of course, I was a latchkey kid, so they weren't home most of the time. So I would just, I knew where they hit. I knew where she hit them, so I would just go grab them and read them, and play my whatever. So there's always a way around it. But anyways, getting back to how we started here. So I started reading on the plane. I picked up Lord of the Rings.
Doing you dirty, man.
I picked up Lord of the Rings and I read that all the way through, and it made a lot more sense this time. And then I started like, well, let's try some other stuff. So at that time I picked up Lovecraft. I've got like 4 or 5 volumes of his short stories. And while his writing is really boring, I just sort of ate all that stuff up. I loved it. And then Robert E. Howard, I got into that. Primarily Conan. There was a couple others in there, but I primarily Conan. And then I started reading some of the other authors that did Conan, and it wasn't the same.
It honestly isn't. I haven't even gone that deep into Conan, but I've read a little bit of both. I'm like, you guys really aren't Robert E. Howard. I'm not sure what you're doing here.
Yeah, I mean the one that they made the first movie off of, I forget who it was. Is maybe Sprague de Camp or something like that.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm looking at it. Oh yeah, okay, so it's not. Or maybe it was the second one. It was the one they made the second movie. Anyways, it wasn't quite the same. And I also went through and I read the entire Narnia series, and I loved that.
Which is your favorite part? I'm curious. I
The
have a weird
first
answer.
one, I think it's the magician's nephew. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really liked that.
Interesting. Yeah.
I really like. There was something about the. Um, I don't want to say it was the. There was something about the where the I forget what her name is, the person who would end up being the Snow Queen,
Oh,
where she
her.
came
Yeah.
from, but it came from she came from this sort of like destroyed
Village.
world. Yeah,
World.
no, it was
Yeah.
a world.
Oh, that's right. It's been a minute since I read
Yeah,
those.
and that was like that really sort of intrigued me. And I one day I want to write a story with that kind of concept involved. I actually started to, but it didn't come out right. So,
Well,
but yes,
you can always. That's the thing too. You can always revisit that, because
yeah,
if you wanted to write it, there's something there you want to communicate. Maybe you just haven't found the right method to do that yet.
yeah. So I mean, it's sitting there buzzing. It's sitting buzzing away in the back of my head. But I really like that concept. I also like the last one. The was it? I
Last
think it's called
battle, final
Last
battle.
Battle. Last Battle.
Yeah.
That one I really liked. That was of course it was I liked all the darker stuff. I didn't like all the the kid stuff. And that one was pretty freaking dark.
You can't. People kind of. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that kid series." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of."
maybe the first three,
Uh,
not so much after that. A lot of
for a fun read, I always liked Voyage of the Dawn Treader, just because
yeah,
the adventure kind of like it appealed to that older style of
exactly.
storytelling that I really liked. But my favorite, The Horse and His Boy, partially because
Yeah.
that name is one of the
Well,
funniest names,
believe it or
and
not,
I love that book.
the Lenogala, I think that's what I call them. I write it down, but I never bothered to memorize how I pronounce it. The Lenogala seeds come from that book.
Oh,
They were inspired
okay.
by that book.
That's it.
So
That's really interesting. I like
so
that.
that's the C.S. Lewis influence right there.
Oh
So,
yeah. Well, he was a great writer, but yeah.
yeah.
Alas, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read a small portion of his book, The Revenant and the Tomb, and hopefully get you guys excited to either read this book or his upcoming release, The Revenant and the Cult, which I'm very excited for.
It's going to read it like Trump.
As cryptic as it was, the warnings of the guide may... I'm going to die, bro. I can't do it. Okay, so
you can go to that place. It's a very nice place. It's a great place.
The best
very
fluids, the best body parts to make abominations with. Holy smokes, dude!
Yeah, we know how this live stream's gonna go.
Oh yeah. Well, we knew how it was gonna go.
Everybody expected how this was gonna go.
Okay,
Anyway.
so I'll
shut up now.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. There we go. We're gonna display that for a second. We will play this. Ooh, that's a little loud. I'll turn that down just a touch, but it sounds good. There we go. As cryptic as it was, the warnings of the guide made itself known within the span of a mile. Vegetation that was once thick and green became sparse, withered. Verdant forest changed as if the color of the world was somehow wicked away. Brown, gray, and black dominating their view. Even the moss that clung tenaciously to the trees and brittle stones seemed withered and dried. Turn that down just a touch. There we go. The life contained within was all but absent, the remains desiccated. Before long, bare branches, absent leaves or needles remained, the husks of trees rent and splintered, yielding to nature. The air grew still and soundless, save for the whispers and rumors of the wind. That, and the jarring call of the occasional raven, the only creature bold or foolish enough to brave these accursed grounds. Drum was correct. The path was clear to see, for nothing grew upon it. A stony road, whose passage led them into a landscape that looked like something from another world. Even the occasional gusts of wind did little to lighten the heavy, oppressive air that surrounded them. something thick pressing down on them with each step forward, as if some unseen will was trying to keep them away. And boom. There we go.
God, it almost sounds like I know what I'm doing.
I know. I remembered that portion, that opening portion of chapter 8, because it really helped sell the atmosphere and how its changing atmosphere was going to affect the characters and what they were experiencing as they slowly go on this kind of they just strode forward towards certain not certain doom, but at least danger. And I like that the environment reflected that as well.
So I'll say, hey, that sounded great. Who wrote that?
It's fabulous. I love it. I love it. But yeah, man, and so you got back into reading as an adult, and then that all of this led you to be inspired to try to tell your own story. Is that?
Yeah. What happened was as I got through all of that, because I did a lot of traveling, as I got through all that stuff, I started looking at modern authors, and it was like I would pick up one book, and I would get to like chapter 5, and I'm like, nope. And throw it out. And
so do you DNF fairly often, or did you used to at least?
Yeah, I'm very particular. I don't like modern language. The other thing is that a lot of modern authors like to really flesh out the world building, and sometimes it gets into what I consider extraneous details, and you start losing me at that point. It's like George R. Martin stuff. Once you get past the others, the further you get away from the others and all the stuff going on north of the wall, you start losing me. So
the further south you go, the less interested I am.
Yes. So it's like, I want freaking ice zombies coming out of the north, popping out of the ground. I don't care about Cersei.
Also, the way that he described the whites specifically, or what did he call them? But yeah, they were very like in the show it portrays them as like there are ice zombies, and then there are people larger ice zombies in charge of the little one. Like in the book, it's described very differently. They're more like fluid and mystical and much more
like
dangerous.
ice fae.
Yeah, that's closer to how I imagined it too when I read it.
And the thing is that the dread of that is what when I watched, or when I actually listened to the whole thing on audiobook.
Roy Dotrice is a goat. He is amazing.
Oh yes, matter of fact, Steve Fortune knows Roy, or at least knew Roy. Roy has passed away, so
sadly.
So, and I said, your dude, your narration is as good as him at any day of the week. So,
honestly, no, guys, check out his audiobooks. I'll post the links here in just a little bit, because they're available on Audible as well as Chirp and a few other places as well.
Yeah, I'm like everywhere. So,
but, yeah, you sent me all the links before the show per my request. I was like, that's a lot of links.
So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, and then you start getting to more, some of the weirder sites and the niche stuff. But I'm like everywhere. The audiobooks are everywhere. Audible, Chirp,
erotic supernatural fiction.net.
Yeah. So you wouldn't believe how many freaking audiobook sites there are. So
I believe it. It's like if I didn't have like 300 books on Audible, I would drop them, but I do. And
but it's and as a matter of fact, when I DNS to DNF, do not start. Yeah, the funny thing is I actually make more money outside of Audible. I actually sell more books outside of Audible than I do in Audible.
Yeah, I got both your books through Chirp. I might have purchased your book on Audible as a gift for Christmas, maybe, but yeah, I'm not sure.
And then the weird part is that it goes out. There's a service called Storytel, which I think is like a library where you can check in and check out the book, and it's overseas. and I'm getting these, I would sell like one or two through there, like when The Revenant and the Tomb came out this year, or I should say last year, 2023. I'm like getting like 29, 30
Oh,
different
there you go.
checkouts. And Sweden and Norway. And I'm like, hello, Storytel.
Yeah, there you
So,
go, man. Yeah, like that's the advantage of diversifying kind of
mhm,
your output and where you're putting things and your work and such. And that's something else I want to talk to you about a little bit as well,
mhm.
because when people have done research about audiobook listeners and people who enjoy audiobooks, vast majority of people who listen to audiobooks are men over
Yes.
women.
It's
And
like
then
eight,
if
my ad stats are something like 80% men, 20% women, somewhere in that range.
that lines up pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the Iron Age in general, the hashtag and people who operate in and around that space, majority there are men as well. But then you
Hmm.
look, and a lot of these people, a lot of these indie authors, a lot of these Iron Age authors do not have audiobooks. I'm like, there is something missing there, man.
Well, the thing is it's expensive.
It
Matter
is.
of
It is a
fact,
lot of money.
it costs me just about as much to produce an audiobook as it does to produce both both the paperback and the ebook alone. So,
That doesn't surprise me.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's the narrator. You could probably get an inexpensive narrator. Or you could probably go with the AI narrators, but I'm. It's getting to the point where AI narration is used so much on like freaking YouTube. I
Oh,
don't
it's
even.
so common. It's
Yeah,
very, very
and
common.
I can't. It's getting to the point I can't stand it. It's like I hear it and I just want to shut it off.
Uh,
So
I'm kind of like that with AI stuff in general.
yeah,
Like I will use an A. My line in the sand is I'll use AI filter to filter an image I already possess, like by
yeah,
5% and no more.
yeah.
And that's the only really thing I've ever used AI for.
But well, I mean, it's just it's like it's the same voice, and the thing is that you can't.
They can't say certain words the way you
Yeah,
want
they
them
can't say
to.
certain words you want, and the other thing is they don't emote properly. They have a narrow range of emotion that they can portray. So they have three. Yeah,
397 bajillion books I'm supposed to read. Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah. I still have frickin' Otter's book sitting on my desk, going. I'm going to read this one day.
I know, man. I know. And the thing is too, like now I'm getting caught up with these other streams and like videos with people, and like we're
Mhm.
rereading stuff. I'm like, I love rereading, but I'm trying to read a lot of new stuff right now. I started the Wheel of Time at the end of last year, and so I'm like gonna be starting book 4 of that here soon. I'm like, these books take a long time, man, even in audio form.
Yeah, I DNF'd the Wheel of Time after the first book. So
I understand why. It
yeah,
does get better. Like each book has gotten better than the last, pretty progressively.
yeah,
But I
doing
do
it.
know it's going to fall off at some point, and it's a big commitment being a 14 book series. So
Yeah,
I don't blame anyone on that one.
who knows?
Especially
Maybe I'll get it on audiobook and listen to it while I'm at work.
it
So
has some of the best narrators on there. Back when they were younger, but it's still very good work. It's Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. They did
mhm.
Stormlight for Brandon Sanderson as well. Very very good
I
narrations.
wonder if they're the same. Whether I wonder if they are the same people who did Shad's book. God, what was it? Shadow of the
Shadow of
Conqueror.
the Conqueror.
So I think,
I think he might have grabbed Michael Kramer for it. I don't know
yeah.
that for sure, but if my memory serves me, I believe he did. Yeah.
So, but I'm happy with the guy I got.
Oh yeah,
Real happy.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. He sounds fantastic, and it's like if you're able to find someone who's maybe not quite as well known, but just as talented, why not, man? It's
Well,
great. Great
it
thing.
was funny. We were when I was drunk when I talked to my wife about doing the audiobook, which probably was not a good idea at the time. Anyways, and we were saying, maybe we should do an audiobook. She's like, yeah, sure, go for it. I said, okay, yeah. So I went and I checked out. It was Findaway at that time, and they had like a whole list of people that you could, narrate through the audiobooks, but you had to do auditions. So I was I was reading, the way I wrote, I'm like, the way I wrote it, I figured the best would be a Brit. It wouldn't sound right if it was an American. It just wouldn't. So then
Yeah.
I looked up a bunch of British narrators and had them. They have to give you a demo, and you're supposed to pick like about 7 or 10. So I did. And Steve Fortune was the first one to come in with a demo, and I heard about 10 seconds of it, and I'm like, "This is the guy. That's the guy." My
Hell
wife
yeah,
listens
brother.
to it. She's like, "This is the guy." So
Well, we got to
that's
listen to all the others
yeah,
just in case.
exactly. And there was only like one other that brought back a demo. So he got it, but I mean, I was listening to that going, "This is exactly what I want." So I got lucky the first time.
Well, that's fantastic, man. And like that's one thing that's one goal of mine is by the end of this year I want to have my audio equipment and like apps for my PC set up,
Mhm.
and so that I can help people start producing at least audio samples, if not full books, by
Yeah.
the end of the year. And I need to figure out how all that works, or maybe have people who are able to help me along with the production side of it a little bit.
Hmm.
But I think that it seems like that's something that's missing, and that if I can help provide something like that, I would love to have the opportunity to someday. So hopefully by the end of this year, that's what I'm aiming for, man.
And then I had Royce do the audio for the or the narration for
For the teaser trailer,
the
yeah.
teaser trailer. So
He actually tried for once. I didn't even recognize him for a second.
oh, there's the whole story to that. He did like three different recitations, and the text that he recited is actually from the book. So
I
it
wondered
was,
about that. I figured it was, but yeah.
yeah, and it was like, I think it was the second one I managed to piece, because he would do like 5 different takes, and I managed to piece together like the entire thing from like 3 or 4 different takes and put it together. And so I gave him this is more along what I want. So I gave that to him, and he tried doing 5 more takes, and I'm like, none of them are as good as this one. And that's how we defined it. So I gave it to him to post process, and that's how it ended up. And then my kid did the video. I pulled out a bunch of images and said, "This is kind of what I want." And he went and he did his magic. So
Does he edit all of your videos, or
yeah.
just
Well, no, not all of my videos, just the ones that count.
just the promotional ones, right?
Yeah, just promotional ones I actually want people to watch.
That's
So
cool. It's a real trick, man. Cause like even a simple like 2 minute about a 2 minute teaser trailer,
mhm.
that's a lot of work, man. You obviously wrote the book and you had the script and such, and then you
Yeah.
have Royce come in for the audio, and then your son help with the like. There's so
Mhm.
much work that goes into stuff like that,
Yeah.
man.
And the thing is that it's one of those things where it's like, well, the other thing is you also want to make it different from all the other trailers. So you got to come up with different and unique ideas. And ideally, I like to keep them under a minute, but there was no way I was going to be able to do the narration and everything else that I wanted to do in a 1 minute time span. So what I did is we just took it out to 2 minutes, and people don't like it, whatever.
2 minutes, that still qualifies as a teaser, and I think
Yeah.
it was effective. Royce's
Yeah.
narration with the imagery was powerful. I thought it was, or maybe it was more mystic and intriguing. Maybe that's
Yeah.
the emotion I felt while watching it.
Yeah. That's actually some dialogue from Hal Cedric.
I figured that. I'm like you said, it's from the book. I'm like, sounds like a Hal Cedric thing to say for sure.
Yeah.
And so yeah, let's talk about a couple of things here. You and I have talked a little bit in the past about this, but
Mhm.
you were writing. You were originally going to have the Revenant in the Tomb be released as a free edition for anyone who bought the Wizard Stone.
Yeah.
Did you start the Wizard Stone first and then start writing the Revenant when it was in the editing
Yeah.
process?
I think if I remember correctly, I think I had started. I had started the Wizard Stone as a full-on standalone story because the backstory to that was I was trying to get published, and one of the things they tell you when you're trying to get published is, you want to the first book you want to pitch is going to be standalone. You want it to be standalone with continuation potential. So I'm like, I have like 4 or 5 books in what I call cold stasis. One of them is a 2-book series. The other one is going to be like a 5 or 6-book series, and I have like 3 books of those already done.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's helpful.
yeah,
I
and
have a question regarding that.
actually 3.5. But go ahead.
Do your plans for those books in cold storage change a little bit now because you're going the
Yeah,
self-publishing route instead of trying to go through a publishing house?
yes, but that's only because I'm taking um, some of the elements that I set up on those stories, and I'm either expanding them or I'm taking them in different directions. In fact, the one book, which is the one series of books, which is about a character named Frankie, which is the one I originally tried to get published back in, so it's like 2006, 2005, 2006. Um, that that is where I'm pulling a lot of what I'm writing about now.
Okay, okay.
And so anyway, so I originally started on the Wizard Stone. That was actually going to introduce. It was actually going to give a backstory of a character that I briefly show in. I think it's like book 3, and he kind of is just like a bit part, and then he's gone. So I decided to take that character and build a story around him. And I had started writing that, and at some point I gave up trying to get traditionally published. I was just like, I'm done with this. I'll never get published.
No more querying, no more
Yeah,
BS agents, and
yeah, and so
I've
I'm done.
heard I've talked to a lot of people about that kind of process, and it's something, man. It's it's not a
Yeah,
good time, at least in the modern day.
they're not going to publish me, um, and so I'll just go the self publishing route. As a matter of fact, at one point, I was about ready to give up. I was about ready to just toss it in. I wasn't going to self publish; it was too much money. I didn't want to put my family finances in jeopardy. And my
Yeah.
wife said, "Don't do it. We will find the money. You publish," because she reads all my books,
Yeah.
and she goes, "You have something, and you need to publish." So, as a matter of fact, my next book, the first book of Revenant and the Cult, is dedicated to her.
Well,
So
God bless her, man. Thank God for the awesome women that
yes,
some of us have in our lives, man. Because that's
so
yeah. Because I've met so many men like you, these hardworking, good men who have something good to
mhm,
contribute to the world, and a lot of them like, yeah, with some maybe this couple of these bigger things in my
mhm,
life, if I didn't have her okay, or if I didn't have her kind of encouragement or
mhm.
whatever she provided for me at that time, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
And
and
so, yeah.
that's exactly what happened. And as a matter of fact, just little super secret, the I'm planning on releasing this next book on our wedding anniversary. So
Oh, hell yeah, man.
I'm so romantic, man.
Just the best.
She's not getting an anniversary present. Anyways, so
I got something for you. No, not
yeah.
that again. Already have kid. Anyway, enough of
And,
that joke. I'm sorry. That I must be
we're
tired. That joke came out of nowhere. Anyway. Oh,
anyways,
and so you
so
have like 5 or 6 books. Like, are they are they chambered, ready to like fire, basically, or are they just
well,
like basically done with the writing?
2 are, but it's like I'm and it gets worse.
Oh
Um,
no.
so
Thank you. I
we go
appreciate
back to we go back to I'm gonna self publish, and I'm gonna write one book, and I'm gonna give it away as a marketing technique, or as a marketing thing where you give me your email address and I give you a free book. And after my wife
Like a
reads it,
hostage exchange. Yeah.
exactly. After my wife reads it, she takes one look at me and she goes, or after my wife reads The Revenant and the Tomb, she takes one look at me and she goes, "So you're going to give this away?" And I'm like, yeah. She's like, "Okay." I like, "Why? Is it bad?" She goes, "No, no, no.
That's not the problem.
You need
So,
to sell this." But you do what you think is right. So what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to give it away free for a couple of months, and then at that point, I will go and I will publish it. And whoever gives me their email address and subscribes to my website, will get this free copy. And I advertised this thing all over the place: Facebook, Twitter, Minds, all the sites I was on at that time. And I think I got maybe about 5 emails.
yes.
So I was like, okay, well, it's gonna get published.
It's a tough game, man.
Yeah.
Like even talking to other people who are pro, like AC Pritchard, he's releasing Spirit Animals. It's a free story. He's doing it for free. He's doing audio versions of it. It's a big old thing, and he's doing it for free so far. And he and I have talked about it a little bit. He's like, yeah, I think I might make a portion of it free, but eventually charge for the rest of it to finish.
I
I'm
agree.
like, I think that's the right way to go, because like this is a passion project, and
Yeah.
there's a lot going into it.
So when I sold, so I buttoned it up as a book and sold it, and I think I sold like over 230 copies in the first year.
There you
And
go, man.
so I'm like, oh, that's not bad. And then I finished up the Wizard Stone, and I got I sold it, or got it, released it and sold it. And in 2 months in 2 months I had made as much as I had made in the prior year. And then in 6 months I had doubled what I'd made in the prior year.
Hell yeah,
And
dude.
yeah, and then like the Comic Con that I went to, I sold out of books. I just sold out.
How like, if it's not a weird question, how many books did you bring with you to the kind of
I
event?
took about 60 or 60 some, because I think I had 63 books that I took, and I had done 2 Comic Cons. I'd done Clausen, which I sold like a sum total of about 3 books.
Ooh,
Which that was awful.
that's
But
so
I did
weird how one could do
yeah.
so well and the other just nah.
Well, you got to know your crowd. You got to find your crowd, and I think I know where my crowd is. And then when I went to the so I had like about 60 some books, maybe 61 or 62 books. And then so I went to the Midland, and I sold, it was like 58 books or something like that. I mean, I had like about 11 books left. We counted. I had 11 books left starting Sunday.
Wow.
So I think I'd sold more than 2/3 of my books, and the first day, and then by 12:30 we'd sold out. I'd even sold the display copy.
Oh, and you kind of do need that one.
Yeah.
You don't want to say like someone wants to buy your book, you're not going to be like, actually, I can't sell that one. Sorry,
Yeah, no.
guys.
So it's like, well, I don't have any more books. I actually had more books back here, but you know how heavy those freaking books are. Holy crap!
Actually, that's not my problem. I'm a blue collar young man. Heavy things are fine for me. It's the other parts,
Well,
organization things that I have trouble.
When you
with.
got a bad hip, they hurt.
Oh, yeah. Not knocking you at all, man.
and now I'm going to have to take even more.
Ooh.
So,
yeah.
So
you need like some of those rolling like backpacks, or like suitcases, maybe that's the
well, that's what I do. That's what I do. My wife has a pickup, so I put them in a tote and a pickup, and then we have like one of those folding carts. Everything fits in 2 totes. I got a video on my setup.
Everything fits in 2 totes. I saw the video. I haven't seen it yet. I saw that it existed, but I haven't seen it yet.
Everything fits into 2 totes. You just put it in the cart, roll it out there, and we can set up in about 20 minutes.
That's fast, man. Faster than we could set up our show for our construction company. But, yeah.
So so I mean, but I was absolutely stunned. And I've come to conclude is that my audience really isn't with the dedicated comic fans. It's kind of like that sort of, they like comics, but they also like, sort of culture outside of comics. And
Yeah,
so
they like fantasy and sci-fi novels, and
yeah,
especially there's a certain kind of flavor of the older variety,
yeah,
like a almost a callback to a pulpier older age that is pretty predominant in the kind of crowd, and I definitely get that in this book.
hmm
You even get that in the Wizard's Stone to a degree as well.
yes,
But what this one feels a little bit more old fantasy pulpy than this
yeah.
one.
That's the
And that's not
size.
I think it's just yeah, I've read both books. I really enjoy both books like I've talked about before. Revenant and the Tomb, probably still one of my favorites that I've read in the last year. And I read almost 80 books last year. So
Wow,
yeah,
cool.
it stands right up there near the top. It's fantastic. And but I mean the Wizard Stone for the right person, this book I could see this book being a lot more impactful for them.
Well,
Like someone in the right
it's
yeah.
either they love it or they don't. And one guy called it the Hobbit for a new era.
Wow,
So
that's and honestly, when I was reading The Wizard's Stone, it reminded me of reading not in the dark like nihilistic BS kind of themes of it, but
mhm,
Joe Abercrombie
yeah,
and his writing style. Like it was just there was a certain realism in the traveling aspect and the how deep the characters were. I think the characters in Wizard's Stone are deeper characters.
mhm.
Maybe a little less hell yeah moments in this book, but the characters have really powerful
There's a lot of
like it's all
there's a lot
about
of
like in this book it's about the quiet moments. In this
yeah,
book it's kind of about the louder moments,
yeah.
in my opinion.
There's a lot of Star Trek red shirt moments in that in the second book.
Yeah. Oh, it's like
But
man, I would hate. I'm not going to spoil your book.
yeah, and the next two books, my wife has read both. The first one,
Can I ask a
the
question
go
regarding
ahead.
that? Do your books line up with her kind of ordinary taste in regards to reading, or is it?
She's very much an action adventure junkie.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so I mean, she really liked the Revenant and the Tomb. She liked the Wizard Stone, but she felt the Revenant and the Tomb was better. Um, but I mean, it's kind of subjective. So long as it keeps your interest, I think. It depends on which way you go. And with these next two books, well, let me back up. She likes like Clive Cussler, Michael
Yeah,
Crichton.
my
uh,
parents are all about that as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
and so she's very gregarious. I mean, she's read some fantasy books. I'm sure she's read some of the um, Robert Jordan stuff. I'm very particular. I like most books I can't read. They have to have something unique about them. One of them was, well, it's like the Song of Ice and Fire. The thing that got me down that road was the prologue in the first book. That
Prologue
prologue,
is for anyone who hasn't read like people don't like it's very very good. It's one of the I'll go so far as to say it's one of the better prologues in epic fantasy I've ever read. Straight up.
and another one was Michael Crichton's Eaters of the Dead, which is what they made.
I need to
Which they
read
with
that.
the Oh, it is a good. If it starts
The
out,
the 13th Warrior is based
yeah,
on
it's
that.
based on
Yeah.
that one, and it is basically, it starts off as an actual account from a traveling Arab who's traveling north, and I think he gets waylaid. And Michael Crichton then somewhere splices in a brand new story from that on,
Hmm.
and it goes into how he meets up with it's
I've
a
seen the movie.
yeah,
Antonio Banderas, my favorite Arab.
yeah.
No, but like
I
Michael
listened.
people talk about Michael Crichton mostly for his action, but like
Mhm.
honestly, or not his action, but his science kind of the way he writes science, and which is very good. It makes me feel like I'm not too dumb to actually understand what he's talking about. But Then you read a book like the Jurassic Park books or Congo. Congo is
Mhm.
my favorite book of his, and his writing is very scary. It's very good horror writing for
Mhm.
anyone who hasn't actually gone too deep into it.
Yeah,
And so, yeah.
yeah, and this one's along the same lines, except it's done kind of like in a very sort of ancient historic, ancient historian documentary style, and that's the thing that caught me because I love that type of stuff. I got frickin' Herodotus on my on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of ancient some of the more ancient histories on my bookshelf that I've read through and completely forgotten by now because I'm old. If
That's
you
not an
haven't
age
figured,
thing, man. I read history books and I forget enough things to not be
I yeah,
trustworthy anymore.
I'm beginning to Biden, and so,
You
but I
want to
mean I've
you want to do push-ups? What are you, a
yeah.
dog-faced pony soldier?
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Hair on my legs, and the kids like stroke the hair. Anyways,
I can describe America with one word. Oh, anyway.
so but it's like
We could do this all day. That's the problem. Oh,
but like Beowulf, love Beowulf. I read
yeah.
I got a paperback of Beowulf, the Odyssey, the Iliad.
Those are
Read through all
long
that.
reads, but they're well worth it.
Yeah, and they're fun. Or I wouldn't say they're fun, but they're some of it's kind of
They're
hard to get through, but
they're
it's
they're fascinating in what
yeah,
it's such a different kind of way of thinking. It's such a different level way of thinking displayed in
yep.
this kind of older culture. If anyone wants those kind of stories but doesn't want the older writing style,
Hmm.
try Stephen Fry's Greek retelling. Says he offers like historical facts and he modernizes the language enough to make it a little easier to digest. So if you want that, try Stephen Fry's Greek retellings.
Yeah,
But anyway,
but yeah, so that's where a lot of my stuff comes from. That and of course the prose comes from guys like Robert E. Howard and Tolkien, and of course some of the ideas also come from C.S. Lewis. And but I mean the lot of the stuff is inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, some of those older works like I said, Beowulf. Um,
any Michael Moorcock, I'm curious.
no, I haven't really read Michael Moorcock. I think I listened to an audiobook once. I probably got about halfway through it.
That's
It's
fair. That's
interesting,
fair.
but I just it just doesn't float my boat.
No,
Um,
I completely get it too. It's the way I view fantasy. There's kind of like the two kind of main lines that came off in regards to fantasy. There's the kind of Tolkienite fantasy that developed, which kind of transformed into D&D fantasy at some
mhm,
point, and then there's like the dark fantasy, like Michael Moorcock kind of style that
yeah.
developed, and that was based off of kind of like Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard stuff
I
as
mean,
well.
my stuff is heavily influenced by Lovecraft, and you can
Uh,
kind of tell, you know. So
Lovecraft, you say?
yes, yeah.
Lovely models.
So, but I mean, I really loved Lovecraft's imagination, and in a lot of ways, I liked his writing style too. But boy, it's dry. Oh God, is it dry?
It doing it in audio or having some visual form to go with it helps it be a lot more digestible for
Yeah,
both of these, honestly. And that's also the other thing. Like if it's hard to read, it's not that bad because most of his writing is pretty short.
yeah,
It's a lot of like novellas or even short stories,
yeah.
to be honest.
He's kind of like Stephen King in that he so perfected the short story that was his medium. Period. And Sir Robert E. Howard was the same way.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
When I think of like the best prose in
mhm,
writing that like in regards to my taste,
mhm,
he's up there.
yeah.
Howard is always up there.
Oh yeah.
He's a like I like Conan, but Solomon Kane is definitely more my
Yeah.
speed.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I bought a Solomon Kane book, which I also still haven't read. So, you want to know what I'm reading? My own stuff over and over
Until
and
you get
over.
sick of it, isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even want to, I don't even want to listen to I don't even want to listen to my old books. And once I'm done, I just want it to go away. So maybe
Let's
one day, long in the future.
a long time ago in a hedge far, far away. Let's acknowledge the chat, the monster that is chat, the beautiful people that is chat for just a second. Let's see. We got. Oh yeah, Andrew Campbell says, "Try Steven Erickson." Did he write Malazan, or is that? Am I thinking of the wrong person? I might be getting people mixed
Possible.
up. Rhett Boncher said, "The Hound scared the crap out of me." That was Lovecraft, wasn't it? Or
I think so.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think I've read all of Lovecraft, but most of it, I believe I have at some point. Hunter makes total sense now that Lovecraft, because Lovecraft is out of the box. Yeah. And then Bambo says, "Dark fantasy isn't my cup of tea. I wish I could find more loader style stuff, but I am very picky about content, unfortunately." That's not a bad thing. Like for me,
Yeah.
I have a few things that will make me want to stop reading a book. If I feel like someone is Herman, I'm sure you've seen this. Like you'll find a book, the writing is good, maybe even some of the language use is really nice, has nice prose, just good characters, but there's a fundamental problem either with a character, the stories, or just the person's worldview coming across in this. And I didn't have a specific problem with this person's worldview because I know them outside of just being some anonymous author. But the way that they viewed the worlds and the incorrect lens and people in groups within the story did not do things that people do in those kind of circumstance so often that I'm like, this isn't real. People aren't like this. It doesn't that doesn't. And I didn't DNF the book because I was dedicated to that point. I'm like, this is so disappointing because some of the characters are fun. The action is well written, has some beautiful scenes that mean nothing because I don't believe any of it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man. It's like, what's an ick? Like, I hate to use a modern word like that, but what's an ick, when it comes to books for you? Like something you're reading, you're like, man, this doesn't really work for me.
It's just, the biggest ick is when I have to get through like pages and pages and pages of backstory just to get to the story. It's like, move that into the book.
You haven't tried Sanderson, have you?
Yeah. No, I actually have tried Sanderson, and he writes well, but it's just not my cup of tea.
It's not for everyone, man.
Or when they get so down into the details of like cultural things, it's like, don't need to know this. When's somebody going to get decapitated?
I get now. For me, I am down for that, but it needs to be delivered in a good way.
Exactly.
Like over time and naturally, it has to fit. I want to be reading or listening to this book and not realize I'm getting a lore dump when it happens.
Yep.
If you can trick my subconscious just enough to make me not think about it, that's good enough for me.
And in this one, I do a little bit more lore. And then my next ones, I do a little bit more lore dumping because I kind of have to because it goes along with the story. But my feeling is that if I'm going to lore dump, because at least all the books I have in my head, with the exception of maybe one, all of them fit into the same world. I can dump those pieces of lore across a bunch of books when it
maybe
is both applicable.
Sprinkle is the right word.
Sprinkle it in.
Just
bam. Anyways.
Also, one thing we like to do on this show, Iron Age Legends, is I interview the author, in this case, a walking, talking bush. But another aspect of it is that we talk about an aspect of storytelling, both in regards to their books and or entertainment that they make, as well as other things that we've seen relating to that same issue. And story. There we go. There's that hedge we all know and love. Also, Swift Sword Rush drops in. He says, "Finally got to reading OG Lovecraft stories. Makes me want to write some." Yeah, you're not the only one, man. And he inspired a lot of people. And he and Howard were going back and we're tossing that inspiration ball back and forth, honestly. Anyone who hasn't read that story about the dream snake with Howard, you're missing out. That might be that's some of his best writing.
Yeah, that's matter of fact, they did a lot of switching back and forth. And matter of fact, I was watching another thing, which was it's something that Lovecraft included from another author, but it was about the King in Yellow.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
or
and
yeah,
that was part of the sort of the underlying plot or the underlying theme of the first
Mythos
season of
maybe.
Mythos of the first True Detective season with
Yeah, I heard
McConaughey
that. I
and
was like, wow, that's something different.
yeah, I was watching that. I'm like, I gotta watch this now, and I can't because I can't find any place that I have to subscribe to HBO, and I'll be damned if I do that.
Yeah, I need to watch Shogun because
Mhm.
I adored that book, and everyone's saying the show is really good. So I'm like, crap, I have to watch it now. So I'll have to check that out. But our topic that I wanted to talk about for with you today, in regards to both your stories and things you and I maybe have observed in other stories that we
Mhm.
enjoy, is creating and writing the main character. That whole process, limitations you place on yourself in regards to that, and or how just kind of your thoughts on the whole process in regards to main characters and protagonists, because it's often overlooked, but writing a good protagonist that's compelling and also
Mhm.
not too goody two shoes is very, very hard. It's
Yes.
a very hard thing to do, and I'd say you did that in both of these books. But
Yeah.
the young man in the Wizard's Stone,
Yeah.
he was a very he was these two main characters serve very different roles,
Mhm.
so they each work individually. But I'm very compelled by the young man and changing aspect from the Wizard's
Yeah.
Stone. So maybe talk about him, that man for a minute.
Well, the Odo kind of came about. It is well that I told you I had a two-book series about another character, and it was
You
my
did, yeah.
attempt to write a what I wanted to do was an autistic character. I believe that I have Asperger's.
Ambitious.
Yeah, I believe I have Asperger's. My son has Asperger's. And I was kind of like, well, maybe I can write a book where the character has sort of these traits, and I can kind of show what Asperger's is like from the inside out while providing a fun, sort of a fun wilderness
A good
adventure.
story, yeah.
Yeah. And discovered I can't really do that. It didn't, it either, in order for me to make the character work, to be somebody that the reader would want to like root for, whatever.
Yeah.
It didn't work. I mean, I can place elements in there, but it just the parts of it that would work with a good story just would not work with that type of
You want
attribute.
to display
Exactly.
a very socially different like person.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, it's not only that; it's the communication issues, learning issues, and all that other stuff, and
Yeah.
having what I call. I mean, most people have like this rounded sort of intelligence. Well, some people with Asperger's, the high functioning ones, their intelligence is like spikes
So really
on a line.
like high level and then very low level.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's just no way to describe it in a book and to make it exciting. So what I did is, like I said, it's been set aside. I'll probably rewrite that character when I go and finally publish that book. So I wanted to kind of maintain that sort of alienation from the world, thought, and or that mood. And so what I did is I made the character different.
Well,
He was
uh he's from a different place.
yeah
So he's basically like a transplanted plant from a
yes.
different place.
Yes, and it's sort of mysterious about how he got to the wizard's tower.
I have
He's
so many questions about
Yeah,
that. Go ahead, go
and
ahead.
it might get answered. So, working on a book right now. Might get answered. So
And you can find those answers in the sequel to The Wizard's Stone by Herman P. Hunter.
you probably won't know it till the end. Anyways,
Oh no.
anyways, the and let me adjust that. So anyways, the easiest way to do that, and something that people could actually latch on to, is to have something that was outwardly different. And so Odo, the Wizard Stone, the character of Odo, had brown, well, I wouldn't say brown, it was reddish brown skin, tawny, reddish
I
brown.
was gonna ask because like the way it's talked about in the book, it was a little. he's darker, but it's a little. It was a little. I had a little bit of trouble picturing exactly what he looked like. I was
Yeah.
wondering, like, is he like Indian dark or
Yeah,
like?
he would be Indian dark. And
Okay, yeah.
he has sort of like curly hair. And my original concept was going to use was the Native Americans, but I'm like, oh, I don't want to be too close to that, so I added some different attributes to that to kind of make my own. And he has an unknown background, and he's never really known his family, and
Well,
so
because he grew up in the tower
he grew
with
up
the
in the tower with
wizard.
the wizard, and the wizard was very good to him. He was a good father-like figure, and he had a family. But there's that thing where when you're different, when you're different, you're different.
Undeniably so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can't. It's something that you can't escape, and then you're always wondering why. You always have that feeling of alienation because I was a kid.
Yeah.
I knew I was different than the rest of my family. I knew it. They just kind of like put it off, but I knew I was different. That I could tell very early on that I was different, and it would be,
See, I am different, but I had no idea.
uh,
Oh, cripes.
I'm different. Anyways,
I feel different. I'm gonna get canceled.
so yeah. Well, they'll come for me first because I'm the old guy. Anyways, I'm the old white guy. Anyways, um, so I knew I was different, and there was always sort of that feeling of alienation, even though I still have a very somewhat of a close bond to my family, although it gets kind of looser the older I get. Um, and so it was a matter of taking that sense of how you feel sort of alienated, but you don't, and
So, like,
putting
you're
that.
still close, but
Yeah,
then there's a barrier there.
exactly. Or there's an acknowledgement that you don't exactly fit. And
And I'll point out too, he's also different in another way in that he grew up in the wizard's tower
yeah,
with basically no spoilers, a supernatural being of sorts as
yes,
his father, which by extension, even without the being from a different part of the world, would make him a rather unique individual just in and of
exactly.
itself.
In a lot of ways, he's very bookish, and because he was encouraged to learn things, and the wizard taught him certain things, which you kind of learn at the end. He didn't teach him everything, and this is the other thing too is one person kind of I got a bad review because it was like, well, he doesn't do magic real well. I'm like going, he's freaking 16 years old, you know.
He also hasn't really learned, like,
Yeah.
it's made pretty clear he wasn't taught that much. Like, he
Yes,
knows
exactly.
things, but that it feels like it's because he's more studious than because
Yeah.
he was well taught. But
Yeah,
yeah.
but he's very knowledgeable. But it's like when you get into stress situations, yeah, the things you think you don't know. So I tried to incorporate that
I
into the
looked at the
story.
blueprints for a force multiplier, and I know how they work. Clearly, that will make my aim very well. But no,
Yeah, no.
not quite how that works.
So, and then on top of that, he's asked to do things that he normally wouldn't do, and he has a very rigid sort of understanding of good and evil
Yep.
and right and wrong, and he's being asked to do things that he knows he shouldn't do, but he doesn't have much of a choice. But he's being told by a guy who kills people for a living. Okay, so you're not gonna get lippy with that. So
It's a great thing about that book because it's this character who's by circumstance alone forced to question the levels of belief and the levels
mm,
of how determined am I to do what I think is right. I would have said I was 100% before, but
mhm,
encountering this situation just like even very early on in the journey, like he's forced to confront, oh, maybe the way that I think is wrong, or the
mhm,
people who think like this will not survive in the world as it is right now.
exactly. And so he has to do things that he knows are wrong or that he's always believed are wrong. And even if he still thinks that they're wrong, he doesn't really have much of a choice. And so he has to sort of do them, and it bothers him, and his conscience troubles him throughout the entire journey. And then he meets with some of the other people that are around the because I mentioned he's protected by a bunch of mercenaries. He meets all the other people, all the other mercenaries that are along with them, and he gets all the different personalities involved.
He finds out the head
Yeah.
honcho isn't not such a bad guy after all, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where you sort of learn under fire, and his true nature kind of comes out near the end, you know, and his a lot of his doubts about who he is and what he could be, he resolves almost like in an instant, because he finally starts making decisions for himself, and these will be decisions that will have impact for a very, very long time. But it's kind of wanted to go through that sort of exploration of that and feeling alienated, and then realizing, after you've been through something, maybe what, even though you felt alienated, you were closer to these people that raised you, and closer to
Then some
the people
question mark of where
exactly,
of
or
your
where
origin.
you really came from.
Yeah.
So that's kind of along the same,
a
or
lot of adopted kids feel that
Mhm.
way. Like
Yeah.
my mom, like she has she could like know her biological family.
Hmm.
Never once has she reached out or tried to. Never
Yeah.
wanted to.
And that you have more in common with the people that have raised you, and that you identify more with the people that raised you than where you were originally from. So
Mhm.
that's it kind of explores that. And it explores, like I said, some of what I called it, the itchy sort of discomfort of being in strange places, and in unsure of the future.
Unsettled,
Yeah.
unsettled. Yeah.
So that's it's kind of where I went with that, and I drew from a lot of childhood experience on that.
So with Odo specifically, he started off basically as an idea or
Yeah,
like kind of a concept to explore.
yeah, and I wanted
And
him to. I
yeah,
actually wanted him to be autistic, but I'm like, this isn't going to work.
yeah, yeah.
So I went with something. I know it's kind of like a cop out, but I went with something that was a little bit more obvious that the reader could actually see,
Yeah.
and would be more easily identifiable for the reader.
Also, it easier to tell a story this way.
Exactly.
And because you're not doing this with an agenda, like a modern agenda,
Yeah.
like if I could see this book being, we'll call it different if it was written by a more modern styled author, so to
Woke.
say.
Let's just say woke.
We'll say the word. Well, don't you say that name? Why did you say that word? So is that how you approach a lot of your kind of main characters? You have an idea, and then it
Yeah.
like or concept you want to explore, and then you build the person around it, or
Yeah.
do you ever start somewhere else and build the character from there?
Well, I kind of start out with an idea of a character, and then I literally sort of flesh them out as I go. So, like Hell Cedric, I actually started a Hell Cedric origin story, and
Yeah, yeah, you've talked
I
to me about this.
I had problems in the middle, so I scrapped it and I started with the Revenant in the two. But I will probably go back to that Hell Cedric origin story. But
I will be there. I will read
yeah,
it.
the I started with I started with the character and what he's tasked to do, and what you would have to be like in order to do the things that he has to do, and to be kind of fearless, but also sort of
Still,
restrained.
still compassionate as well.
Yeah, restrained, and that's another thing. It comes in with the next book. It's the some of the his limitations of what he can do, and his sort of the more spiritual side of him, really is really highlighted in the next book. So
It really shone through, partially in his words, but more so in his actions throughout the
exactly.
story of the Revenant. And I'll tell you guys something else too. Like it's okay that you can you this is a free it's a free country. You're free to DNF any book if you want to. And I was but I do give books a chance to explain themselves, because there's a portion in the very beginning of this book. I'll even say it. It's not a spoiler. Um, and he, like, Hell Cedric gets hurt very early in the story, And I'm sitting here wondering, like, all right, if he just walks away and we go on this grand adventure and there's no consequence to this, I'm gonna need one hell of an explanation. Well, there was an
You
explanation,
get one hell of an explanation.
and you get it very fast. But I was for like just a half second, I was a little nervous. But yeah, there's that. I'll talk like well, while we're on the subject of kind of main characters and such. With me, I'll have like the main character will never be about exploring a specific idea like that. I'll usually have an image or a certain type of person in mind, and then I'll build from there. Maybe they'll explore certain ideas like that in some of the writing that I've done in the past, and even
well, I mean,
recently.
really, Odo was the one. Odo was the only one that I started with a specific idea. How Cedric was kind of like, okay, this is the character, and then I start thinking through, okay, if this character does these sorts of things, what type of person does he need to be? And as I go along, I start building rules for the way this person is supposed to react, and how this person thinks, more or less, and where
like a
his limitations are.
general guidelines in regards to moving forward with the character.
Exactly. Kind of like in the Wizard Stone, Enoch. While somebody said called him a gray hat. He's reality. He's not really a nice guy. I mean, he gets paid to do some pretty nasty crap. And I actually, what that one story that where he's sitting there sharpening his blade, he's talking about this one village that they had to quote dispose of.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was again the portions of the Wizard Stone that are the most intriguing to me are those just those quiet conversations.
Yeah.
Around actually, I've noticed something. You have a lot of conversations around campfires in your books.
Well, I mean, if you're traveling, you don't have a lot of conversations while you walk, especially.
I know, yeah.
Especially when you got people chasing you.
That's true. That's
true. So you're going to be sitting around the campfire and not wanting to go to sleep because you don't know if you're going to get jumped in the middle of the night. So little things like that. And yes, there will be more of that. There will be more of that in the next book.
Next year, we're bringing more campfire talking, more conversations, more than ever before. I need to. I've been challenged by someone in my gaming group to do an entire game of Helldivers just using the Trump persona. I don't know if I could keep it up for a 20-minute mission. Maybe like a 10-minute one, but a 20. I don't know, man. That's dedication. But
you remember you were at one of Mike's streams, and I think you bought at an auction. You bought Elliot Fernandez's.
Elliot, that's his name. Yeah. I have so much trouble remembering his name.
Elliot Fernandez. Elliot Fernandez. He's a great guy, and
he's a phenomenal artist. Seems like a cool guy.
He did. I remember one stream. He did Arnold Schwarzenegger the entire 3 hours. He was doing nothing but Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh my god, it was so funny. I was laughing so hard. I was crying.
The anatomy, it's all wrong.
That's exactly what he did. Get to the chopper. So, but yeah. So, like I said, the way I do characters is I'll start with something and then I'll kind of build out and figure out kind of the personality as I go. And then try and figure out the limits. Odo was the first one that started with a concept. The other one that started with a concept was my first book, which is sitting in cold storage. The character named Frankie. This is
it's Frankie.
Yeah, it's a portal fantasy. It's a the character is basically a community college dropout that's transported to the world that I'm writing in right now. And
it's an isekai.
Yeah. Right. Well, he's being told he's being told that he is the chosen one, the promised one who's going to save the world. And Frankie's not exactly the boldest guy around, and not exactly.
So he's the underqualified chosen one.
Very, very, very underqualified. There's one part in that there's one training scene that I have, and it's like his first day in training. It's pretty stark.
It should be, man. It's like the Black Prism. Did you ever read that series by?
No.
Oh, It's like for a fantasy series, it's one of the strongest opening books I've ever seen. But this one of the main characters is this kid. Turns out he's kind of a chosen one,
Yeah.
and he's likely to become very, very important based on some readings and history and like cycles and such. But he at this point he's like a chubby, overweight 13-year-old kid who's not very talented at anything yet. And
Yeah. Mine's like a 20 something gamer who, basically incel gamer. That's what it
your
comes right down
average
to.
Seattleite.
Yeah. And
Except maybe no colored hair and confused
yeah.
identity.
And he really has no direction in life, and he all of a sudden he finds it the hard way. So, but yeah, that's like I would say that's my passion project. It is sort of my passion. That's where everything stems from. All this lore comes from there.
R.H. Snow says, I love getting Herman started on his characters. It's like talking
Yeah.
about a beloved family member. Snow, I've talked with you too. You're the exact same way. Oh, I love it, man.
But yeah, so he's the one. If there's a character that I truly love, it's that one. But the thing is that once you're done with the character, the love affair is over. It's like I'm kind of over Odo. So
Yeah.
I liked
Nope, I
liked him
understand.
while I was writing him, but time to move on. So, but
And
Frankie's
yeah.
Frankie's the one I'm really working toward.
I hope you're able to work him out, man. Because there's if done well, it'll appeal to a lot of people, and it might provide, and for others who maybe have never seen that guy or never known that guy very well, maybe it'll provide some valuable insight into that guy. Because I've met like not to get too into like out of away from the stories and such, but like there are a lot of men, a lot of people nowadays, my age and younger, especially guys, who are really kind of feeling just stuck.
Yep.
And that, like, I'm getting that vibe about Frankie as well, at least until he gets transported through a non-wardrobe portal into a
Yeah.
magical land.
Yeah. So it's that's like the 5 book series, and it takes him. It's a lot. It's a little bit like the Odo stuff, except in more extreme, and it's more in depth. But yeah, it's kind of like like I said, the incel gamer gets to become the chosen one. And the funny part is about that series, and this is stuff I'm dropping in all of these books, is it deals with prophecy, but the series itself explores prophecy. It doesn't ride a prophecy to the end. It sort of sits there and plays with it. And if I do it right, you won't notice it.
Yeah, no, that's a like something like a lot. I've seen you. I kind of was wondering about that a little bit, just reading to both of these books, and now that you've said it out loud, it kind of just confirms some of the things I was wondering about. But I love when an author is able to do that, like hide something in the book so cleverly or so well that you kind of don't notice it. It's like good sound design in a movie. If it's
Yeah.
really good, you aren't really thinking about it.
Exactly about. But you can sit there and read it and read it and read it and finally catch it after a while, start seeing it, or hear about it and then see, hey, yeah, there it is right there. I never noticed that before. And that's the cool thing about any movies and books where somebody's done it right and you're not seeing it, or like the twist at the end that they dropped hints everywhere and you never saw it because it was so subtle. That's what I
Yeah.
want to do. So
No, I love that in a like you. It's easier to do that in a book because for some reason when there's no visual, like it's much easier to hide certain mysteries. Like
yep.
despite some criticisms I have for the books, the Harry Potter books are very good mystery books,
Mm-hmm.
at least on an individual like book level. And no, that's something I always kind of appreciated too. Or even like I'll talk about Sanderson again because by God, it's the law. And um, someone pointed out like I was rereading the Stormlight Archive, which is a task and a half because each of those books is about as long as the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Jeez.
And yeah, they're very. I love them, but they are very long. Like in audio form, they're like the longest one is like 57 hours. It's huge, but anyway. And someone's like, "Yeah, no, I love the D&D part of it." I'm like, what about it reminds you of D&D? There's nothing about the world building, nothing about the magic. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, like the class and kind of rank system. I'm like, there isn't. Oh,
Oh,
there is. I just didn't think of it that way. Crap. Or even one more. There's a Wheel of Time. Robert Jordan. He snuck this in. It pissed me off for about a week and a half because I didn't realize what he was doing right away. And then I was like, there's this magical sword. It's a sword of Kalendor, and it's in this land called Tyr. I'm like, great. It's in a castle in Tyr. We call this castle the Stone. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. A week later, the sword in the stone.
yeah.
I did not get. Oh, I felt so dumb because I didn't get it right away. No, but yeah. So what about the function? Like how? Because part of writing a main character is they both have to be someone interesting that you get to follow along with and maybe identify with in some way, but
Mhm.
also they're supposed to be progressing the story.
Yeah.
How any advice you could give about people like maybe new writers like Maji who are trying to navigate that and balance all of those things regarding a
Well,
main character?
the thing is that I'm what I call just I'm what they call a pantser, discovery character. So
Pantser, pants come
yeah,
off.
yeah,
Oh, okay. Wait. Oh, different thing. Sorry.
we have our pants on this live stream. Anyways, um, we do you do have your pants on, right?
Shorts.
Close enough. Anyways, so so I kind of like when I start a story, I'll have like a beginning, a basic idea, an ending, and then I'll have a couple events in between, and then everything else just sort of happens as I write. And
So
it,
a very basic
yeah,
outline. Do you even write it down, or is it
no,
more
it's
just in
all in
your
my
head?
head. It's all in my
Okay.
head.
Yeah.
And I usually figure it out before I start writing. Like the next book I've been thinking about for all last year. And so I know where I want to end up. I know where I want to begin, and I cut a couple of things in there. And as I write, I'll find things in there, and it's like, oh my god, that's a good idea, or I need to apply that somehow, or I dropped this. I I just sort of wrote this certain thing, and I could probably play off of that somewhere else, and then sort of build your story that way.
Cutting
There are
out your
some
puzzle pieces as you go a
Exactly.
little bit.
There are some people who have to plot stuff down to, down to what actually happens in a scene and in a chapter. Um, and the thing is you find out what works for you. And that's kind of, I think, what's more important. There's going to be people say you got to plot your books. If you want to do writing well, you got to plot your books. That's not 100% true. I mean, I was a kid in high
Yeah.
school who used to get marked down because he never did outlines because I freaking hated outlines. I freaking hated outlines.
I had the
So,
most basic one, like me too.
yeah.
But I do have some advice in regards to that. I think there's basically like if you're having trouble doing the writing the way you want, like writing regularly or writing well,
Mhm.
there's two different pieces of advice I'll give to two different kinds of people. If you're the first person is the eternal world builder who is world building and then never writing anything down. You need to just kind of take a pantsing approach at least as a tryout and just ignore all the detail stuff and just go forward. If you're having trouble getting the actual story onto the page, that's what you need to try pantsing for a little bit and just kind of letting it all hang out there. And say if you're the other person, if you're a panzer and you find yourself getting stuck more often than not and you kind of get lost while you're writing, you may need to outline a little bit more than you
Yeah.
do. So yeah.
Some other tips is number one, you rewrite, just vomit the words on the page and go from point A, from start to end. And then, because this is what I do, I vomit the words out on the page. I break it down into chapters. I start a chapter with something like an idea or something like that, and I'll write it all down. And then, if I'm writing and I find a good place where I want to cut and get rid of some of the mundane stuff, that's where I'll end the chapter. if I need to explain what happened between the first chapter and the next chapter, I might do a paragraph or two that explains it and just kind of gloss over it and then move on to the other major thing that I want to do. One of the biggest problems.
So you write in order for the most part, unless you have to go
Yes.
back.
Well, I've done it both ways, but I'm kind of trending towards writing in sequence.
It
And
feels it's so hard not to.
yeah.
I've tried it writing out of sequence. It feels weird. It feels off.
Well, I used to write out a sequence. When I come up with a good idea, I would sit down and I'd write it down, and I'd have a chapter. And then I would, like with some of these other books that are in cold storage, I would just stitch those together, and I'd have a story. And then I'd sit there and smooth it out, refine it, and all that other stuff. Kind of like doing drywall. You put up your stuff.
You work on one section, you let that section dry
Yeah, and
out
then
for a while, and you work on something
you
else.
mud it, and then you start, it's kind of like smoothing it all out. And by the time you're done, it looks like a cohesive wall. There's no seams, there's no nothing. But the important thing is to get the words out on the page. Don't worry about misspellings. Don't worry about if it sucks. I sit there and I will go through dozens of times before that book gets, or at least a dozen times before that book goes out the door, to revise stuff, change wording, get rid of things, add things.
Herman, can you talk to the chat for just a second? That I need to take care of something real quick. Sorry.
Talk to the chat. Talk to the chat. The hand don't want to hear it. Go ahead. Anyway, so like revise the magic in what I do happens in revisions. I will sit there and I will tweak and I will change things. I will work with the words, change word order, move stuff around until I have something that I think flows and is cohesive. The other thing that I would say to a new writer is, if you're bored writing it, then you probably shouldn't be writing it. Just get like the stuff that's really good. If you need to add things to sort of connect stuff, that's fine. And but it's like the mundane stuff, nobody wants to read it. And if you're bored writing it, they're going to be bored reading it. So that's kind of where you have chapter breaks, where you can have gaps in time that you can like go over and just sort of briefly detail in like a paragraph or two. Like, wow. So that's the other thing. And then, your first few books are going to suck. So get that out of the way. It's somewhere in that continual writing, you'll find your voice, and you will count the book. Oh, okay. You'll find your voice, and you will start writing the way you want to. Can't hear you.
Next segment on the Iron Age Legends, Interpretive Dance by Kahuna and a Hedge. The ultimate hedge, some would call them.
Voguing. Vogue.
All right, girls. Under the chin. There you go.
So, like I said, but the other thing is do what another thing is have a writing ritual. Like I do my writing rituals, I will sit down and on one day on a weekend, I will pump out a chapter. There are some people who will do like a few 100 words a day and, maybe more on the weekends. I don't know, but they always write, something every day. I find I can't do that. I'd like to, but I can't do it.
Schedule doesn't allow for it.
Yeah, and then the other thing is try and keep it like a sort of like I said, a ritual, and try to be religious with it as you can. And then
having a habit, that I think that's kind of the most important.
It's most important. It is the most important part, because the habit is the thing. If your week sucks, the habit that ritual that you treat yourself with, that's the thing that will make the end of the week even better. That's the way it was. Because I would go to a cigar bar. I mean, the freaking Revenant and the Tomb's dedicated to that cigar bar. I go to a cigar bar, I'd have my cigar, and I'd sit there and write.
Not a bad way to go, man. I mean, I quit
No.
smoking in high school, but that was me.
Yep. So those are some things. And like I said, don't. Who was it? Hemingway said the first draft is always shit. Pardon my French. So
I'll allow it.
If Hemingway says that, you're in good company. Last time I checked, he was pretty famous.
Also, if you find yourself thinking this doesn't even qualify as a first draft, F it. It's just a perception. Call it a zero draft if you need to.
Yeah.
It's funny because like sometimes my writing comes out with needing very little editing, like right from the get go. Majority of the time, it's cross-eye inducing, unreadable monkey typing on a keyboard.
Yeah.
But then like some friends of mine, like a couple of them specifically, they can write and need almost publish ready things without any editing. And I'm just like, how do you do that, man? That's sick.
Well, I will say that this next book, it was a lot easier putting it together than once I got rid of the stuff that was like, this isn't working. This next book, I mean, I did very few passes with it, and if my wife says that it's good, then it's good. So, I mean,
so you really found your flow with this book.
And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So the other thing too about a writer is finding somebody you can trust to read your stuff and tell you whether it sucks or not. And that is very difficult, but it gets easier when you have more books out and you have fans, because then you can pick from your fans to have them read stuff over and have them give you feedback.
Yeah, you need alpha, beta readers, but then you also need not accountability partner, a critique partner. That's the word.
My feeling is too many cooks spoil the soup. So I try to keep it, find one person you can trust. Mine was my wife, and she obviously was the right choice, because everybody seems to love that first book. So that's the other thing. It's hard in the beginning. It gets easier after you get like another book out. So
it's like anything, man. Even if you have a good natural kind of pedigree for it or a passion for it, it still takes time. Just because you're very interested in something doesn't mean you're going to be good right away. Like me, I'll give a weirder example. I've always wanted kids. Always did. Even when I was a younger child, like 10 years old. I'm like, I'm going to get married young and have kids. I did that. Nothing about that qualified me to be a good dad. I was a terrible dad at first, man. Oh my gosh. Like I was pleading with my my first infant son, trying to get him to listen, like treating him like a defiant 6-year-old instead of like a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old. It was just stuff you learn, man. And writing's the same way. You'll figure it out, but you got to keep with it.
Yeah, so that's the thing, and it gets easier the more you do, the easier it gets. And there was one other thing, and I forgot what it was, but
that's okay. It happens at certain ages. I've been told. I don't. Just shooting shots. Oh, is there something on your forehead?
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, okay. Just checking. But yeah, no. Back to the kind of the sub discussion subject. Cripes. It's also interesting too, because sometimes different stories require a different. I feel like some stories require a certain kind of main character or protagonist, but then some protagonists require their own story.
Yeah,
and it kind of depends on which book that is. Like, I'll give a couple. Like, for one, my favorite fiction series of all time, lots of hand flourishing. That's how you know it's a good one. Is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and that is not a story that needed a certain kind of character. That was a certain type of character. That was a character that needed his story to be
Yeah.
told.
Well,
And
it's
so
like
that's one way to approach it. But
I could have
what do you
never,
think?
I could have never done the Wizard Stone with Hal Cedric because
Nope.
he's not a fit for that. I
Even
start
having him be there would disrupt the necessary story that needed to happen in the
exactly,
Wizard Stone. Just his presence alone would disrupt that.
exactly. So, and I guess that's the other thing too is don't try and make the character fit the story. Or yeah, don't try to make the character fit the story. Try and make the story and the character work together.
Yeah, if one of them has to change so drastically it doesn't work, then
Yeah,
the ingredients don't mix. Oil and water, it
exactly,
probably doesn't work. And I've had
exactly.
stories like that. I had one story, it's a fantasy story, and I've kind of worked out how to do it now. But it was originally like a Superman story in a fantasy setting. Basically,
Hmm.
an alien, a very powerful alien lands on Earth, but he gets captured by wizards very early on, and basically turned into a puppet king for a country. And I think I found a way to make the idea work. But at first, I'm like, this is like I keep on trying to write this like a superhero story, but it's not a superhero story. It's a
Technically
fantasy
speaking,
story.
Hal Cedric is a superhero.
I
If you
mean,
think about it.
yeah.
So he's just like
Yeah,
going, I am the Batman.
just like Squirrel Girl from Marvel. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a superhero story.
So I mean,
Oh,
but he has those certain traits, and he's a goody two shoes, more or less. That will
moral.
cut your head
Again,
off
like
if you're the wrong person.
he will righteously dispense with justice
Yes.
in the face of great evil, which
Yes.
is why people would not do certain things in the Wizard Stone if he were there.
Yes.
Oh, I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, I don't know if there's actually a story there if he's in that story.
Yeah, I know.
All the problems just go away, I think, or turn into different problems. But yeah.
Exactly. So
Also, Batsaw says every story needs a lizard man and a winter soldier. I might be missing something there, but okay. I like either way. But what about you? Like, what are some main characters in other books or other media in general that really you think are a really good example of a good main character? What are if you had to think of some?
Conan,
Oh,
because he's very ambivalent.
he's
I mean,
he's so simple, but for
yeah,
that story, you almost need that.
yes, and he's a lot smarter than what he's a lot smarter than what he lets on, and
Well, he's quiet, so people think
yes,
he's dumb, but he's not dumb. He's
exactly.
very smart.
He's very smart. God, what was some other ones? I really liked the Arab of in the 13th Warrior.
Eaters of the Dead.
Yeah, Eaters of the Dead. I did like that. And of
Well,
course,
he was a great example of like the fish out of water story.
yeah,
But
exactly.
it's also a great way to explore a culture. It's like a lot of stories they'll be explaining all these things. They're like, you live here. Why are you talking about this as often as you are? But in that case, it's like, oh, he's from a different land. He's learning their language. He's learning the culture. He's seeing things for the first time. So him observing these things and asking questions, it helps us
Exactly.
learn too. It makes a lot of sense. It's a really smart idea.
So, but even in the movie adaptation, I like that character. And of course, there's the like even going into that one, it's Bovi. I think that's his name is Bovi or Bovi. Um,
Yeah, his buddy kind of guy. Yeah.
The leader of the Vikings. He was. I liked him because he's sort of quiet and he's
I didn't think
Conan
about
character.
it until now, but he is kind of a Conan character, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. So he has him show him how to write words, and then he memorizes it. Only seen it once, he memorizes it and writes it back.
I'm like
days, weeks later.
It's like that's the kind of character you read about. Like, I'm so pissed. There's no part of my brain that's that smart. I just don't work that way, man.
So, and I really did like Samwise and Frodo, because of the innocence. Matter of fact, I enjoyed that I enjoyed the hobbits from the Lord of the Rings probably most of all because they were just basically average people who just wanted to, you know, live
They were the working day Joes of the group for
exactly, and they
sure.
just wanted to live a quiet life, and go to the go to the tavern and drink their beer and stumble back home afterwards, and that's all they wanted to do. As a matter of fact, if that's anything that I like most of all, it's I like sort of average people being thrown into extraordinary circumstances.
And the
And
Wizard Stone reflects that
yeah,
idea a lot more so than maybe the Revenant books, but
well,
yeah.
the how Cedric's origin story is he starts out as just a foot soldier. Even
Uh,
though he's from a
it's
no,
implied that he was an ordinary man that was uplifted
yeah,
to a position of greater responsibility and power, possibly.
yes,
Well, not
and
possibly, but
and
yeah.
the original of this first book, the original chapters that I had actually went into some of the things that he did outside of the adventure. Like I did something where he was in the kingdom of Eleanor and he had met with what I call the herald, which is kind of like an angelic creature that is a voice for God.
I was gonna say I can guess that kind of position there. I'm
Yeah,
like it's either something close to. I was gonna guess either something close to a prophet or like an angel that
yeah,
foretells something that's about to
yeah.
happen.
And the origin story of the Revenant in the Tomb, he actually meets the prop. He's quote raised by the prophet Jalamiel, but he isn't really raised. He's just sort of like God works through him. But the prophet Jalamiel, he's a Cathar in my world. He's a black guy, and he's like this real famous prophet. He later becomes this hugely famous prophet, and
Huge.
yeah, and he's just Jalamiel is just he's like the prophets of old, but in a way he's a real sort of humble, just a average individual who's kind of has to go do all of these things that he's told to do, and he's very humble, and he doesn't his robe is threadbare, and he
Well,
eats whatever he can find.
well, to get into that kind of aspect of storytelling too, let's talk about that for a second because, like, think about almost every Bible story of all. It's almost never an extraordinary person called to do something that God uses in the Bible stories to do
Yep.
something extraordinary. He usually calls someone who will display His glory because
Hmm.
David was small. There's no way he could do this, or that. But
Hmm.
even other examples like Esther, it's like you're just a woman in this world where you've been conquered by another nation, and you're a
Exactly.
woman in this society where that doesn't count for much. It's like she changes the course of her entire family
Hmm.
through just sheer dedication, obedience, and determination. And it's like yeah, it's another example. It's like a lot of these people are just people,
Yeah,
and
and they're
they're called to do
yeah,
something more.
yeah, they're not hidden princes. They're sort of like Jeremiah was picked from. I think it was Jeremiah was picked from the womb. You're going
Oh
to
yeah,
be
yeah.
my prophet. Um, and God
What
just
a
sort of
what an extraordinary statement. You
yeah,
pokes the
you,
belly. You.
you are it.
Oh,
I made you. You were going to be this before you were even born. So you are the guy. So another one is Job, or not Job. Jonah.
I was
Jonah
gonna
is one of
say
my
not. Yeah.
the book of Jonah is one of my favorite books, and it's sort of very it's way deeper than it looks because Jonah is
It's
told
it's
by
a little overlooked. I'll
yeah
say that.
it Jonah is told by God you're going to need to go to Nineveh and preach to the Ninevites that they need to repent or I'm going to destroy their city. And Job's like, or not Job.
Ah,
Jonah is like, yeah,
kind of busy. Like basically sent them to straight to voicemail.
yeah, and he's like, I think I'll go the other way. And God sort of like says, no, you're going, and he gets thrown over the side of the boat, swallowed up by a fish, and spat
Gonna
out right in front of Nineveh.
gonna use a Family Guy voice for this one. Hey, I see you going down that little sailboat there. Be a shame if a big old whale was to swallow you up.
And so no matter what happens, he's going to Nineveh, and that's where he ends up. So, and he takes the hint and goes and preaches to the Ninevites and they're the people of Nineveh, and they repent. And at the end of it, he's sitting out. I think, if I remember correctly, he's sitting out beneath a tree, and the tree is dying, and he like because the tree's giving him shade, and he's like saying to God, "Why are you letting this tree die?" And he goes, "Yeah,
I
but
did what you asked. Why are you
yeah,
letting this
it's true."
terrible thing befall me?
Yeah, and he goes, dude. God goes like, dude, I was going to destroy all of Nineveh, and you didn't want to go there to stop that. So why are you complaining about the tree? With the people who are more important than the tree, or
You're whining about shade, and this
exactly.
entire nation was going to be destroyed.
I was going to wipe out a city, and you're worried about the tree, So, and it's very profound in that way. We tend to overlook. We
Well,
tend to overlook
yeah.
these because we're so invested in ourselves.
Well,
So,
it speaks to the selfishness inherent in virtually all people.
mhm.
Like if you're not taught otherwise, I think everybody's selfish, very very strong
Oh
to a
yeah,
very
I mean
strong degree.
everybody, me, everybody,
Yeah.
and but you see, when I first started writing, when I wrote this book with Frankie, I was somewhat ambivalent about, or I was somewhat torn about whether I wanted to include biblical concepts like that into a fantasy story.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the first time I wrote what was be Frankie's story, the first, 100,000 some words or something like that, I excluded all of my religious sort of beliefs. And it was very sanitized and very generic. And of course, I didn't get it. I didn't get published because the book sucked. I mean, it just my writing sucked. The book sucked. I just didn't want to hear it. And when I went back the second time, and I said to myself, okay, well, if you're going to do this, maybe we need to have the same discussion. Are you going to take some of the things that you strongly believe in and you're going to put them into this book? Because the funny part is, the story of Frankie was inspired by a passage from Revelation, which I'm not going to say because it would give a lot of stuff away.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like saying to myself, maybe I should. There's all of this. There's a lot of deep stuff in the Bible, and
Good
it
night,
gets
Bambo. God bless you.
so overlooked that it would, and it makes so much later, and it makes so much. It's something that people can really kind of identify with and latch onto. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't use it.
Yeah.
And so there's just so much there you can mine. And so that's why I bring a lot of that stuff into my writing.
Well, you do it the right way. You never sacrifice proper storytelling
Mhm.
for the sake of a message, which is I talked to MD Boncher about that when I had him on. I've talked with a couple other people actually, but yeah, it's a very hard thing to balance, especially in a fantasy novel
Mhm.
specifically. Like I noticed in Revenant specifically is in both books honestly, but you're taught like some of it is it's using different names. To me, it's
Yep.
obvious what it means, but
Yeah.
maybe to someone else it's less obvious. But I thought it was handled very very well. That's just my opinion.
And the funny part is I want to make sure I'm not on mute anymore. I have atheists that actually read my books, and they
Oh
don't.
well, that's
Yeah.
very believable
Yeah.
considering like the way it's delivered.
So, but I mean, like a bunch of stuff in the Frankie books deals a lot with faith, and it's actually a good way to portray it, because he's guy thrown into an absolutely absurd situation, decides that he's got to actually believe it, and it's a test of his faith. So we're gonna do bad lip reading. Yeah, I'll take 5 grams of heroin. 5. Oh,
Sorry, I'm back. So the office is being renovated a little bit, and
oh,
the door to my office is not there, just against the wall right now,
oh.
taken off the
Well,
hinges. But
that's going to be happening to me pretty soon. My back area is a freaking mess. That's why it's all
is
blurred
that? I
out.
was gonna say why? Yeah, I figured that's why it's blurred out. But yeah,
I mean, I have the camera tilted up. It's not as bad. But behind me is my bookshelf.
that's also my favorite angle. Just
Yeah.
anyway, this is how I conduct interviews.
So but so yeah, so I felt that this time around, maybe I should throw those concepts in there. And I think when the way I'm trying to do it is not to do it with a real heavy hand. To try and kind of like, I don't want to say sneak it in, but have it woven into the story where
Organically.
it's more organic, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, no, guys, we're not quite done yet, but I may have to go here soon. So, if anybody has any questions for the Ultimate Hedge and or myself for some reason, feel free to ask them now. Also, I'll point out that MD was asking if you were disassembling a force multiplier earlier. I think he was talking about when you're playing with your pen because he
Yeah.
couldn't see it. He could just hear like the
This is actually the pen. Oh, see if I
it's not going to work.
blurs. It blurs the damn pen. This pen that I'm using, it has archival ink in it, so that when I sign it, it doesn't like fade or whatever. So like when I do books and stuff, it's actually what they'd use in libraries and whatnot.
Oh, sweet.
And
I
this
like
is
little details like that.
and this is a coin from Eric Hawkins, Zombiful World of Oz. It's a poker chip. Eric Hawkins is on the Drawn and Quartered Ultimate Edition, and he has a whole a zombified Oz comic book.
Oh, Battle Brick Road, is that the one? Or is that
No,
no, that's something else. That's something
Zombieful
else.
World of Oz, and he's got another one with Tom Sawyer. So, but he has a whole series with the Oz characters and battling zombies or something like that. He's a good artist.
I love stuff like
Matter of
that.
fact,
That's the thing. Too. Like you're really like because you moderate for Mike
yeah,
streams and you're really plugged into a lot of those guys.
yeah,
That's a cool world
and
to be
it's
a part of,
it's
man.
very helpful to have because I need maps and stuff here. I'm going to unblur this here. No, I didn't want to do that. I want to do this, and I want to touch up my appearance.
But
I do want to unblur this.
adding blush, adding younger filter.
Yes. He did this bookmark, and if you've
Ooh.
read the Wizard Stone,
Yeah,
you know what
it's
it
one of
is.
the. I know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it, man.
And that creature is actually that it's not something I made up. It's actually I think it's a South African or just an African folk tale.
Africa is African mythology is underutilized. There's a
Exactly.
lot there across the different nations there.
And I was watching a YouTube video called Storied, and they did that, and I'm like, ooh, that's something. That's something that I could incorporate, and so I included that.
Have you
And I
like
didn't even, and
yeah.
the name I actually kind of try and kept the name so you could kind of figure it out if you really went looking for it.
If you know kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like have you noticed with mythologies like almost all mythologies across the world that I've researched and read about and read books on. It's like there's a lot of that. Like there are themes that kind of come in there. Obviously, they're quite different in certain ways, especially in the dressing, so to say. But like the most common thing I've seen across many mythologies is um, adultery leading to bastard children, leading to the unaliving of said children or the parents. It
Yes.
seems to be the most common story in any mythology I've ever
Yeah.
every single one I've read. It's like, why is adultery like one of the main themes, and then our patricide or the kid version of that? Why is that so common in mythology? I wonder. Maybe because back
It
then the
happens
family
so many
unit was.
times
It does. Yeah.
that there's
And
resentment when you do that, when they're not part of the family. I mean, if you think about it, you get into the Bible, you had
Cain and
Abraham,
Abel,
who,
and yeah,
well, no, Cain and Abel were actual brothers, but
yeah,
when you get into like Isaac and Isaac and Ishmael,
yeah, yeah.
half brothers, and there is contention there between the mother of Ishmael and Sarah,
Just a little bit. Yeah, just
and what was it,
what a
Absalom,
what a
King
mess of a
David's,
family, by the
yeah,
way. Thinking about that.
Absalom, who revolted against his dad, was David had multiple wives,
A
and
lot of them, if what I've read
one
is
of them
true. Yeah.
raped one of the sisters, half sisters, stuff like that. So there's a lot of that type of, hey, maybe you just kind of one wife, one husband, one wife.
I'll just take the one wife. Thank you.
Yeah.
No. It's
So
like, why? I'm sitting here thinking, why would anyone want more than one? I know why, but why? In practical terms, why would anyone want more than one? That just seems like a really. No offense to anyone, that seems like a lot of work.
it is. It's a lot of work, and
You're like, I would never do it again.
yes,
But
it was fun while it lasted, but
all of the 15 minutes we got along. Anyway, all three of us. Holy smokes,
so,
dude.
but just little things like that type of stuff. A lot of it comes down to like human nature and
Oh yeah, for sure.
what it is. I mean, if you're kind of like the bastard son, you're sort of like the odd man out, and you're sort of like the red, literally the redheaded stepchild. So
Unwanted, soulless.
exactly. And or you don't fit, but there's your father and he is your father and you have inheritance, but you got a bunch of people who hate you because you're not their child.
Yeah, you're allowed to be here, but you don't, but you're not welcome here.
Exactly. And so
Which,
that builds
that's almost a
resentment.
worse. That's almost a worse. Having it like halfway is almost worse than just total rejection, I
Yeah,
think.
because you can go find your own life being completely rejected,
Yeah.
but only half of it being there. Then you get a
It
lot of
leaves you
conflict.
wanting that thing you'll probably never achieve, which is
Exactly.
I think that's part of why like sorry, a little off topic, but Naruto, I think that's part of why Naruto is so compelling for kids and people who grew up with it and enjoyed it. Was the idea because he was like he's this orphan in this village and he's taken care of, but like nobody likes him and they all mistreat him because of something that he had no control over and he doesn't
Hmm.
even know about. And so it's like his idea is like I'll become your leader and then you'll have to respect me. And it's
Yeah,
like for a lot of people, I mean that's a powerful motivation. That's some good character work there, honestly. Truth
exactly.
be told.
I'm reading R.H. Snow's Herman there, missing you at D and QFE. Chester struggles with the awkward silences when you are not there.
Oh, bro, that's funny. No, I like that's something too. Like I, whenever I go on someone else's show, and I almost as a habit, I'll apologize afterwards. Be very Canadian, and say I'm sorry if I talked too much and was an obnoxious, loud like a hole, basically. And they're like, no, actually, it really helped fill in the silence. I'm like, well, I can do that. Oh, I love it, man. It's fantastic. But yeah, what like? Oh, I might have to go. You guys need help?
I've answered so many
Okay.
people's questions that nobody has any more questions.
Well, it's getting late. We have, like people start. We had kind of a spike of people there in the middle, which is
Yeah.
different. Usually, it's in the beginning, if anything. But um, yeah. So here, I have one last question. I think for you,
Yeah.
and going forward creatively, like what would be your greatest hope or greatest expectation for both this book and your kind of creative endeavors going forward?
I make enough money where I can buy my own house in Mountain.
It's good ambition, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
You already have the look.
yeah. I'll wear a cap with a little turtle on it. Like that.
Have a walking stick that you don't need to walk with. You just
Yeah.
like to throw it at people.
Yeah. Here, take my stick.
Get off my mountain.
we're Tolkien got it wrong. Anyways, I'm beating up on George R. R. Martin.
Oh, do you? Oh, there or like when they had George R. R. Martin on Family Guy, like on the Family Guy for a minute. That they did him so dirty on that. It's like they had one guy there, and like he's just sitting there listening to someone explain all about their extensive world building and all this.
Yeah.
And then finally, it's revealed that he's a fraud, and then they have this much fatter, uglier, like wheelchair-ridden version of him, like rolling. I'm George R. R. Martin. He's an imposter. I'm like, bro, you had to do him so dirty.
I mean, I have to admit, he's got some really. I love some of his concepts and his world building, and when you get into Essos,
his world building is very detailed, very well thought out, and even some of his language, like linguistic choices. It's like we're not having breakfast. She broke her fast with this.
Exactly, and
like,
I do like his.
Yeah, I love it.
I do like his writing style, but it's just that he can't finish his books.
Also, Guilty says, "Yeah, you get that mountain, Herman." All right, so do it, Herman. You are famous.
RH Snow is famouser than I am.
Oh, I love her. All right, hey, RH, no pressure. Finish that thing so I can record it for you this week, or try to. I don't know how soon you needed it, but do the thing so I can do the other thing. All right.
Boy, that was very specific. About the first thing and the second thing. First guy to the second guy. First thing and the second thing. Don't tell anybody about this conversation. I'll try not to.
Or it's like in the Naked Gun. It's like yeah. What? Well, maybe I know something. Gives him money. All right, yeah. Is that asking a few more questions? The guy looks over. Well, yeah, but why would you want to know that? Gives him the money back. It's like it started. I love that movie. Whoever wrote that script, the whole thing. I love it.
Analyze This was one of my favorites, and that's where that one thing I mentioned came from. Where they're like these mob guys are talking next to him, and they're talking in these vague terms, and he turns on and says, "Hey, don't tell anybody you heard this." It's like I'll try not to.
I feel like comedy writers they were on something different back then. It was just they were just funny, like Airplane, The Naked Gun, any Mel Brooks film.
Well, what happened?
Where is all that comedy now?
What happened is that if you take a look, the comedy became political and nasty.
I did notice that. I did gross that a little bit, yeah.
And so now everybody thinks that that's how you get laughs. And the fact is that, oh God, there was one of them, and it's some Asian chick, and she's kind of like loud. She's tiny, loud, and sort of obnoxious. And everybody thinks that that's funny. And I'm like, this is not funny at all. Amy Schumer's another one.
You can be those things and be funny, but you need to. You're not funny because of those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's another one. I forget what her name is, but it's like Ilsa something. And she's sort of a feminist, but she's very funny because she kind of talks about things from a very from a very feminine perspective, and she can be very, very funny. And the other part is she doesn't go the places that some of these other people go to, with the sex and the gross stuff and all that. She's able to keep it kind of grounded.
Well, yeah, like there's this other one, Taylor. She's kind of a feminist, but she grew up Christian, so like she'll touch the dirty stuff but not be explicit with it.
Exactly.
So it's tasteful, but it's still funny. It's like I don't like Louis C.K. I never really thought he was that funny to me.
No.
It's like you can be dirty and still be funny, but it's just I don't really know how. I'm not sure why some people are able to strike that balance for me and why others don't.
And well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you have to say stuff that people can identify with. And when you start getting into like a lot of the political humor, a lot of people can't identify with it. A lot of it's just plain flat out mean, and they think that that's what makes them funny. It's not
Yeah,
funny.
if you want a good political humor movie, The Campaign is pretty effective.
Is that the
Uh,
one?
with
Is that
Will
the one?
Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
I know it's like if you don't like Will Ferrell, maybe it's not for you. But if any Will Ferrell movie does make you laugh, it doesn't make fun of one side. It makes fun of the Constitution and the p-
Yeah,
performative aspects of of politics.
yeah,
And it's like when they're up there shaking hands before a debate. It's like they're always whispering something to each other like that we can't hear, and you're always like, I wonder what they're saying. In this movie, it's like they're just roasting each other. It's like saying the most deplorable things to one another. It's like, oh,
so, but yeah, I mean that's kind of what's happened to comedy, and it started a while ago with a lot of the political and the cultural stuff, and it's just people think that that's what's funny, and it's really it's not, and that's the reason why. That's the reason why a lot of stuff nowadays sucks. A lot of the stuff was rooted. A lot of the stuff, the problems that we're having now, was rooted way back 30 years ago, because
even
that's where it
longer
started.
maybe.
Yeah.
Depend. Like it's all perspective a little bit. Like I've heard like because my like when I was younger, I had a certain perception of like the 1960s, and then I hear from like my grandparents who were there and other people. I'm like, oh, maybe my perception of that was way wrong. Why is it that way? Oh,
Hmm.
because movies and culture have raised me to think that it was this time of peaceful protest and like
No, it was not.
psychedelic free love. And I'm like, nope,
Yeah.
not
No.
quite.
Yeah. That's that it gave birth to Charles Manson. So peace and free love, baby.
Oh.
So, but
Well,
they, but
I'm no
yeah,
bet. I'm from the '90s. I'm no better. I gave birth to the end. The end. The early '90s gave was the death. Was the Reaper's scythe coming down
yeah,
on my favorite genre of music, which is hair metal.
yeah,
It's like we traded that for grunge. Are you kidding me? Dang
yeah.
it!
In fact, I've been listening to a bunch of Liz Fair and Liz Fair, and I. It's interesting. Some of her music's good, but a lot of it's awful. But I noticed that when she goes live, that chick cannot sing live.
Some
She just
people, yeah, yeah. Some people
they
cannot.
obviously work a lot on her studio albums when she sings.
You know
But
as a genre who performs really poorly live?
who?
Rap artists.
Yeah.
Almost all of them are not sober and they're not giving. They're kind of just cashing in at some point because they're
Yeah.
making more off of their albums anyway. So it's like, and touring costs a lot of money too. So it's like they can just make more albums, but like it's just basically like, oh, we'll take a hit and promote this a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's
So
like
yeah,
that. A lot of those guys cannot perform in front of
it
a
was
crowd.
interesting that you were choosing Dokken because I was a big Dokken fan in the '80s.
Oh, dude, yeah.
So
Well, all my favorite music came out before my time,
yeah,
pretty much, pretty basically.
I
Except
was
for
a
some of this newer metal stuff I found recently has been a really good callback. Like Beast in Black, it has like the
mhm.
synth and the like kind of 80s like that they do the synchronized headbanging thing and the
Yeah.
power chorus coming in is it's good.
The stuff I used to like was the stuff from the '70s because I'm a big prog rocker, you know. But I mean, I still
Black
love my
Sabbath at all or no?
no. Actually, more along the lines of like Kansas and Yes and Rush and all of that.
Oh, Rush, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Queen was another one I really enjoyed
I mean,
listening to Queen.
it doesn't matter what age you are. Queen should
Yeah,
be they're famous for a reason.
yeah, and some of the, like Triumph. I really liked Triumph when they were out. They were kind of like the more heavier metal Rush.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
they were from Canada too.
You ever
And
get into like Deep Purple or any
oh
of
yeah,
that, or
yeah. Although I
any,
do like
any like
I do
Ronnie James Dio or any of that?
yeah, I had a couple of Dio albums. Some of his Dio's stuff was kind of hit and miss for me. Um, but and I do, I do got a couple of the old the actually I enjoy the Dio Sabbath albums. Then I do
Heaven and Hell is a very good album.
yes, it's an extremely good album, and I can't believe that I don't know whether he quit or they got rid of him for another singer. I can't believe that they did that. But then again,
Well,
they were
Black Sabbath, they've had 5 really good, depending on your perspective. One of them I kind of question, but 5 really good singers,
mhm.
and everybody thinks of like why am I
Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy? Yeah, must be tired.
Hey, Ozzy Osbourne. I share this.
I'm going off the rails on the crazy train. How can he sing and not talk? Anyway, that man has baffled me since I was a child. Oh, like how's he alive? It's a medical miracle, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's preservatives.
they're just salting him every night.
Exactly. To take a look at what's his name, Keith Richards from frickin' Rolling Stones.
Oh,
You know how
how
much
that?
how many chemicals have passed through that guy's system. I mean, he
No.
looks it too. I mean, he could be 25 and he would look 78, 79 years old. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, a lot of chemicals pass through that guy's system, and he's still around.
Or it's like even like it's a fake character. Like I've been watching Cobra Kai recently. Never
Mhm.
watched it when it came out, but one of the guys is like he's one of the older guys. And like, yeah, 80s. I was like I was a Vietnam vet. I was high on blow. I was teaching teaching kids karate and picking up chicks every other day. Like, it was a great time. I'm like,
Yeah,
kind of lot. Don't remember those years that well, but anyway.
yeah. That's I look back on my as much as kind of my awkward teen years. 80s wasn't a bad decade. I mean, we only had to worry about nuclear annihilation, which never really happened. So,
My Russians.
yeah. I mean, the economy was fairly good. It came out of the 70s. After Reagan, economy was pretty good. Things were fairly
Taxes
stable.
on alcohol weren't as bad.
Yeah. I mean, and, you could have a beer without being rated by ATF. So,
And it seemed like more people kind of solved their own problems a little bit too.
yeah.
That's one thing because I grew up with people who had to do that even after the 80s, and
Mhm.
then like I came from Hawaii too, where everything in Hawaii is a little bit behind culturally and such, especially and socially especially. But so it's like over there, it's like, yeah, my grandma's house does not have an address. There's no unless you run your own stuff. There's no phone. There's no water. There's no
Yeah.
sewer. No mail. Nothing. And so it's different world out there. It's like, how did she survive out there all those years? The Christian? Well, she was made friends with the toughest guy on the entire island, and he told everybody to not touch her house. That's pretty much it.
And so I think that was like the last great decade that we had. The 90s were kind of like, and I think we've been in a downward spiral ever since, my personal opinion.
Again, I'm like 90 vintage 94, so I barely remember. Like one of my earliest like strong memories is not 9/11 happening, but the day afterwards, the
Yeah.
way everybody was acting. I remember like going into a barber shop and looking at all these newspapers, and everybody was just very weirdly quiet.
Yeah.
Nothing before or since has made that kind of impression on me as when that happened. It's pretty like in my lifetime that's a pretty substantial event.
Yeah. And I mean, it changed a lot of stuff.
I do
So,
I do feel like even despite the some of the BS political stuff that was going on, I feel like there was still in America like kicks butt and hoorah and like pro America for about maybe a decade there.
mhm.
It felt like that was a pretty strong inclination of the country as a whole.
Yeah, and then it went
I feel
sour.
like it's gotten worse since that kind of dropped, obviously. But
Yeah,
like, despite the other problems, I did like when that was still a thing, when people were still like, pro country, at least pro
yeah.
liberty.
And even with that, well, going back to the '90s, I mean, even with that, that was like started the advent of computers, and there was still a lot
Changed
of,
everything,
yeah,
dude.
it changed everything. But I mean, it was a brand new world. '80s was the same way. You know,
Well, like,
computers came out in the '80s, but
computer?
they
Yeah,
became,
but like, what were they able to do in the 80s? Like, I knew a guy who worked at Boeing. He's like, I remember when we had to use a calculator to start our computer.
yeah. Well, I mean, you'd be surprised at how much stuff like accounting and all that was done. My parents had a flower shop, and we had a computer running our business in the '80s. So, I mean, it was all COBOL, but I mean, and I'm telling you, a lot of that COBOL stuff is still running this country.
I believe you. Yeah, because wasn't the internet originally like created to be like an alternate communication method for the U.S. military, or am I
Yep.
way off base there?
No, that's how it started, and it was gradually built up over the years, and
Mm.
then it was like handed off to private corporations to sort of like use to like develop, a larger sort of network system, and that's how we got the internet. I mean,
It,
all that stuff was new. '80s, '90s, all that stuff was new. It was brand new world, and I was a programmer. That's when I started my programming
oh,
career. And I'll tell you,
I didn't know you actually did that.
oh yeah, I write software for a living.
Wow.
And I'll
Oh,
tell you something.
I'm
It
dumb. I
was
don't know things.
it was fun. I mean, it was an adventure
Well,
every
did you
freaking
feel
year.
like kind of like an explorer? Because like
Yeah,
it was so unknown at the time. It's like you
yes.
guys are creating the infrastructure of things moving
As a matter
forward.
of fact, the funny part is going back to my family. Not a lot of people really understood what I did for a living. Yeah, I was, my brother was a doctor, and my sister was in law enforcement.
Did they tell you to
And
get a real job at some point?
well, I mean, like I said, I failed out of school, or I wouldn't say I failed out of school. I was not exactly the best student. I never failed, but I got by the skin of my teeth. I'm surprised they let me out.
Me too.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, but I had my senior year. They had just developed a brand new computer programming class. It was like the first in the district, and so I signed up because I had been learning computers kind of on my own, and so they put me in that class, and I was paired up with a freshman. And our first assignment, we wrote a program that the teacher couldn't understand,
Oh.
and he chewed us out one side and down the other for about 5 minutes, saying, "You're gonna, don't you ever do this type of stuff again, or stuff I don't understand. You keep it like this, you keep it like that." And then he goes, "And here's your A."
That's so
it
funny, dude. I
it
love
was the
it.
second academic A I had ever gotten in my entire history of public school. So, I mean, the first one was in fifth grade. That's how bad it was. So,
Jeez.
and so my parents kind of saw that, and they somewhat fostered it, but they never really understood. And then when I got into like electronics and I got into computers, they didn't understand what I did, and I don't think the rest of the family did.
Yeah, yeah.
And but the funny part was is that my great uncle, who was a doctor, I mean,
That's what you
my,
get for double dipping, Snow.
so my great uncle was a doctor. As a matter of fact, my first son is named after my great uncle, so I really loved him. And he was a doctor. He was beloved by his patients. I mean, absolutely beloved. And I loved the man. I respected
A
him.
real doctor. Good.
Yeah, and he was the only one who understood what I was doing. He said, I'll never forget it. He told me, he goes, "I envy you," and I'm like, "What?" Because my great uncle, he was a wealthy man.
Wealthy,
Okay,
established,
yeah,
well
wealthy, yeah, well
beloved.
loved, beloved. Everybody loved the guy. I mean, he was, he was one of the people that I really looked up to. And he goes, he told me one day I was going out to my car. He goes, I really envy you. And I'm like, what? He goes, this computers and all this stuff. This is a brand new world, and you're right at the bottom. You're right at the ground level of it, and you're gonna build a brand new world. And I kind of envy you that. I wish I might have been born, later.
That's a profound thing
Yeah,
to hear as a
and
younger man.
I never forgot that. And the funny part is, it was the old guy in the family understood what I was doing, and nobody else did. I mean, all I ever got, whenever anybody ever asked my parents, they were like, "He's in computers."
Oh, it's like for people who are YouTubers for a living, it's like, what do you do for a living? Online entertainment.
Yeah.
So, prawn, got it, figured it out now.
But no, because they didn't understand it, and they didn't, and I don't
Yeah.
think anybody. My brother kind of did, but he didn't. He wasn't there. He was off in another state. But my great uncle did, and that's the one thing that sort of like that really. That's the one thing I remembered to this very day that sort of shook me, that made me understand where I fit in things. And now here I am, off on this off on a new adventure, like Bilbo
Well,
Baggins.
I'm glad you're on it, man. I probably wouldn't have met you otherwise. And
Yeah,
yeah. Thank you for coming on. By the way, this has been a great
no problem.
interview, and it's like I love having guests on. And I had John on last time, but then he had like a time limit he had to go. I'm like, an
Mhm.
hour is not long enough to have a real like conversation, man. But yeah,
Don't feel guilty, John. Just don't feel guilty. It's okay.
no, John, absolutely feel
You feel
guilty.
guilty.
I'm bringing you back for episode 5.5, mother
He's
lover.
just Kahuna is just wounded, but it's all right.
I
Reputation
will survive.
absolutely destroyed.
I will survive. Anyway. Oh, bro. But
It'll be okay, man. I'll make it. I'll make it another day. So
oh, you're talking about your uncle and something he said that profoundly affected you. My brain went to a very different place. Something my father said to me, but it wasn't positive. It was very negative. It wasn't maybe not positive or negative. It was impactful, but it was he's like, I'm going to tell you a list of things that I would do to get you to not to influence you to not get married right now. I would cut off my pinky finger. I would give you $10,000. Like, and he had like 5 or 6 things like that in a list, and I was like, well,
okay.
Oops. Anyway, I got married the next year. I have a bad rebellious streak, but alas, Mr. Hedge, is there anyone you want to shout out, or any other projects, any things of that nature you want to share with the class before we call it quits for the night?
RH Snow has been nominated, I think, again for a Prometheus Award.
Yes, sir. Yes, she has been.
And of course, Maji, because she puts up with all of us.
Love
She's
Maji, man.
the Shalarian historian. And
the princess of the IronAge, yes.
Yeah. And John A. Douglas, he mentioned me in his book. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. And I really love his show. AC Pritchard's too. I kind of like an AC Pritchard show too. I like.
Oh, have you ended up on there with him and his lovely wife yet?
Not yet.
Oh, so. You got it. Like, he likes to get deep into stuff, man. He has a lot of questions, I'm sure, man. It'd be a fun time.
So, but it actually, the funny part is that I really enjoy a lot of the IronAge guys. It's probably one of the best community I had. Of course, Royce and King Richard and Daniel and all them.
Oh, all 3 of those guys are phenomenal in their own ways, man. I love it.
And I give Royce so much crap. You've
got to, man. You've got like I respect him very highly, but then he'll just say something that, like, it doesn't really matter, but the opinion is so wrong or so out there, I have to say so. I won't let it go because it affected me so profoundly when he told me. He's like, yeah, I don't own a pair of swim shorts. I'm like, what do you mean? Can you not swim? He's like, no, I swim. I swim in my jeans. I thought he was joking. The man's telling the truth, and I'm.
Why would you swim in your jeans? They're heavy.
It sounds awful. I don't. I drown. I don't understand. But anyway,
I mean, I could see if you like cutoffs, but not your entire freaking jeans.
I like they're the jeans. I cut them off right about here. That's where I like to go.
I like to wear my Daisy Dukes when I swim.
I have a pair of jeans I've cut up to basically Daisy Dukes. Unfortunately, while I have worn them for a couple of pictures and for one time on stream, I discovered I cannot sit in certain positions without
binding
and or showing everything.
Oh,
letting it all hang out there, but I cut them too short, is what I'm saying, Herman. Oh, bro,
need a little extra length in there. So,
length is actually my problem. No. What has happened to this show, man?
It's gone right down. So, but yeah, I'm very, very appreciative of the IronAge. I feel like I found a community. And of course,
absolutely, man.
I'm also in the writer dojo, which is Larry Correa and M.A. Rothman's Facebook group, and I spend a lot of time in there. Yeah, I spend a lot of time in there, and they've been.
Boncher mentioned you and him have knew each other before from a Christian writing group. Of
Christianwriters.com, and I said, yeah, you should come on over to
IronAge,
the IronAge, yeah. They're a little bit rougher than this crew, But
that's maybe for the better in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like keeping it tasteful, but at the same time,
well,
I also can go there too. So
I work construction, man. So I'm a Christian guy who works construction. I try to balance it a little bit, man. It's like on my channel, I'll use innuendo, but that I try not to be explicit. I don't know if
you think construction is bad. Wait until you start dealing with computers all day.
Yeah, no, yeah. I know what the internet has to hold. I remember all the websites school didn't know to block when I went to Bunny Lake High School. Anyway,
I mean, I've made up words that are still being researched to this very day as profanities. So.
Also, it sounds like they might need you. Chester is crying because his admin rights are only 10 for Oh, that's fantastic, man. But hey, guys, God bless you. Thank you all for coming. Herman, it's been an honor having you on, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the insight into who you are and how you write. And thank you for sharing that with everybody here. It means the world to me, honestly.
Thanks.
And at some point,
when you too, man.
At some point, when you have something else coming out, I can have you on for another episode. And when a guest comes back for a genuine second episode, it's going to be called IronAge Myth. And so I'm saying you will have graduated at that time. But yeah,
will I have been the first myth or the second?
It depends, man. It depends on who I have come on for a myth first. If I had you on an earlier show, I could have had a second show but for this book, but it's too late.
Yeah. Alas, it shall not be.
All right, guys. God bless you. Happy Thursday.
Solidarity.
And hail the IronAge! Woo!
I felt that through my strings.